and got a chance today to catch up again with a dear friend, a guy who currently on tour with Bruce Hornsby, has been with him for quite some time, and we had a great first installment, and looking forward to getting into it again. John J.T. Thomas, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Oh, thank you, Jake. Yeah, always nice talking to you.
Yeah, man. You know, I have to start by asking you about this one individual who I actually haven't talked to in a while. I'm going to text him after this interview, but I did notice, I mean, you've kind of been able to get your hand in a lot of different cookie jars musically, and some of that's just organically how you carved your path, and then some of that's just through association and collaboration with other musicians. So I have to ask you about how, or a good memory or story, how you originally connected with the venerable drummer John Molo.
Holy shit! Sorry, yeah.
Because that dude, I mean, dude, we've done
That was my wake-up alarm in case I was still asleep.
Yeah, that's right. Me too. I'm like, how can I get out of the slumber here? You know.
Let me make sure it's completely off that I didn't just. Yeah. Okay. Good. There we go. Now it's gone.
Right.
Yeah, life on the road. You know.
I can't imagine. I do it 8 hours through the night. Buses breaking down. I mean, you never know what to expect.
Yeah, it's definitely a different day every single day. No monotony. That's for sure.
No.
Unless you just call seeing dozens of backstages at hotels monotonous, but I don't find it that way at all. You know. Right.
There's still something that it's almost, I don't know, I look at my peers and I think, I mean, you guys are in a bit of a different boat. It's interesting. I don't want to get away from Molo, but it's funny.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. But it ties into the road dogging. Is like, I just cut out a audio clip of my second interview with Jack DeJohnette. It's his birthday today. And,
oh, nice.
Yeah, and he was just, I was asking him about the quandaries that, this is a couple years ago, but this is about just the quandaries that exist about how musicians make a living. And he was really just talking about, you know, that generation, Bird, later Miles, Max Roach. There was a lot of money in promotion for these guys that they didn't have to worry about promoting their gigs or their music. And
right.
So there was actually, like, there was a budget there, and now it's like, for musicians, it's like, well, you know, they're just playing music. They're having fun. It's not work. And yet, I guess maybe we can start there, because I would like you to talk about, and I don't care if it's, I mean, you worked your ass off learning, like even just programming stuff on stage for Henley or playing. Can you talk about the physical and mental toll of a working musician? I just remember Charlie Persip saying that when him and Dizzy would go on the road and there'd be promoters who would be like, man, you're just playing. They're like, we're not playing, man. This is work.
Yeah, you know, I really can only speak to the way I have done it, you know. But certainly it helps to have indefatigable spirit about it, you know. And fortunately, it's something you love to do, so you can. I could not spend the kind of hours that I've spent, especially those technical things, in anything that I didn't really care about. You know, you can't just get hired to do a job and put in 15-hour days for months in a row, you know, like you do making a record. It's just because somebody wants you to. You have to really, it has to mean something to you. So I think there's that advantage when you play music. You're doing something that's so born of the heart and so important to you and maybe and possibly to others that kind of afloats your boat a little bit when the winds, your sails, you know, are not full of wind and help keep you. But I was going to say that I've said this. I've told younger musicians this, you know, just kind of in counsel to them about, you know, becoming a musician. If you go to law school or you go to medical school, you know, when you graduate and you get out with your degree or whatever, you know, there's a law firm waiting to hire you somewhere, or there's a hospital that needs doctors and you get a job. If you're a musician, when you get trained, you have to build your own hospital as well.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Just go to work in somewhere else. So it's a whole other level of commitment in a certain way, you know. And I think that's part of what you're talking about, is just not only doing it, but having to create it's not a demand for it, but you have to create interest in it all by yourself, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, so I mean, that's for students today. That is not necessarily the J.T. Thomas, the model that existed when we talked about you coming out of Palmdale, winding up working with.
No, absolutely. I mean, at that time, you could play in a top 40 cover band and raise a family and play 5 or 6 nights a week and get your shit together and survive doing it. I don't believe that exists anywhere, at least not in our country. You know,
absolutely. I mean, I think
anybody's
maybe you are 100. That's that. I just why I guess maybe the point is. We'll talk a little bit about how, because it's funny you just said that, because the longer portion of the audio Jack was talking about, he goes, you know, schools which now train musicians, so to speak, you know, they do the best they can to prepare them for the real world. But right. Unlike hospitals or law firms where there's opportunities to work, you know, there's clearly a path. You know, now it's like, and then on top of that, you know, even disseminating your work, you don't even get you don't get paid for that anymore. I mean, it's just like, and I just wonder when you were in it, just even scuffling along, like figuring out your own sound and how you fit in, how to serve the song in the studio, and you know, did you recognize at the time that you were having your cake and eating it too? Or
no,
yeah, go ahead.
Because that was the world I was birthed into.
Right,
you know,
right.
It was that way. I didn't invent that, but I would not. I would be the last person to say what you and I have seen over the last 20 or 30 years, where all the opportunities just went away. That's like the idea when I was, you know, making a living playing top 40 bands in my 20s, that 10 years later, the clubs would become, you know, pay to play, and you had to bring your own audience in and sell the tickets yourself. That just would be ridiculous, you know?
I can imagine. You must have, like, what was it like when, do you remember, like, I mean, the beginnings of it? I mean, there was still, like, this, even in the late 70s and early 80s, I mean, that Reagan era really started the sort of, I remember Joe Sample told me the sort of motto was, you know, I have mine, why don't you have yours? Like, it was like, you know, like, oh, you're a sucker, you're not, you know, do it, I don't know what it meant. It was like one of these sort of faux pull you up by the bootstraps kind of thing, when in reality, it really takes a holistic apparatus in order to get off the ground. And that being said, there was still a pretty vibrant live music scene, punk music. Where did you fit into that whole? Because I mean, the early punk music was fascinating, because those guys, no one would mistake them for virtuoso players,
for trained musicians. Right?
Yeah, right. You know,
well,
but
I mean,
it was
that would have been a black bark if you came up with.
That's right. And you, of course, are, you know, coming out of Palmdale. I haven't stopped listening to Village of the Sun off Roxy Live with Zappa. You know that tune? Oh my God, the turkey farms there. I mean, it's the
I don't know if I told you about one of my first gigs I played when I was a teenager. It wasn't in Sun Village. It was, you know, when the Antelope Valley was settled, there's a big wash that comes down to the mountains, Big Rock Creek, and it kind of separated the valley. And on the other side of the wash is where the black people were allowed to live, which is where Sun Village is. So it wasn't segregated like that in my time, but it still was the ghetto as far as that valley was concerned. And I remember playing a gig out there with someone. I was maybe 17 or 18 years old, and played with somebody older. and I've never seen guys walk around like flasks in their back pocket. A guy walked in the club with a pistol and like shot it off in the air. I immediately ducked behind the piano.
Dude, this is insanity.
In such a place, so it was definitely lived up to the reputation that Frank gave it for sure.
Oh my God, I keep thinking of you.
He was there 10 years before me, so I'm sure it was even more Wild West.
I mean, he said that there were like turkey farms there, and like and he's like, and there's one line in there's one line in the song where he's like, "I hope the wind don't blow," you know, like it was a funky. I mean, again, the idea I didn't actually realize, you know, it wasn't Baltimore, which was like strictly segregated city, but. Right. I mean, still, like Village of the Sun. I keep thinking of JT. I'm like, I know that cat was. You were in it, and almost it had already changed at that point, but it's still classic.
But you could see you cross that gulch, and then all of a sudden these ramshackle buildings, you know, and a liquor store with people sitting out front, you know, getting drunk, and
my kind of scene, I think, actually. no, the shanties. Yeah, no, it was rough.
And as far as the turkey farms go, that was like as a young man, you know, every area has, you know, the starter industries. If you're 18 and you're looking for your first job, and one of the first jobs you could get when you got out of high school was working for the turkey farms, and it was the most grotesque. Basically, in the processing houses, you're plucking the feathers out of them, and you're I don't even want to describe it.
No, you're gutting. You're basically gutting them.
You're basically it's basically a slaughterhouse.
Absolutely
raw. And you're standing, and you know you have to wear rubber boots. You're standing, you know, shin high and shit,
God.
And it was just the most. I did work one day there, and it was all I could to do to even get through that one day. I think it made me go home and practice a little harder.
Yeah, you're like, I can definitely make some dough without having to do this. No, it's funny because when Zappa was talking, when that recording came out, that was exactly the J.T. Thomas time in '74. So
yes, it was.
And at one point, the audience sort of like yells out something. I don't know. It's not discernible, but you know, maybe like, "Yeah, I buy my weed there." So he's like, "Oh, really? It's changed. It's changed quite a bit."
Well, you know, I had the great good fortune to see Zappa the year that the album Just Another Band from L.A.
Absolutely,
with Flo and Eddie. That record was recorded live at I think it was at UCLA, maybe Royce Hall, not Royce Hall, but somewhere there. And I, as a 15-year-old, went to that concert and was just blown away. I was just a huge Zappa fan to begin with, and to see this show with it, memorialized on record, it was. I just felt like I had, lived to see Mount Olympus or something.
I want to ask you, this is really important because I've been channeling this. I've actually been on. You kind of got me into it just because of your relationship with Beefheart, but I've sort of gone back and then I just did these two interviews with. I'm not sure if you saw Zappa when he had double drums with Chester Thompson and Ralph Humphrey, but I've been doing this dive into Zappa, and there's this like he's on like Mike Wallace's show, and
oh yeah, those live TV performances
exactly, and it's like and like it's like during the Zoot Allures period, and like he's like he comes out and he was not a teetotaler, but he didn't do any drugs. And
no, he didn't. Unless you call it caffeine and tobacco.
Exactly. Unfortunately, yeah, that's right. But he, it took a minute for him to sort of warm up. There's like I think actually the funny thing is Kenny Rogers was also on that sort of panel that night. And then and then like Mike's so they go through some sort of ho-hum questions, and Zapp is this monster intellect, and you can see he's kind of just not really engaged. And then Mike's like, hey, we're a little short on time. You want to play? And he just gets up there. I mean, barely tunes the guitar, turns on the amp, and just blows the doors off the place.
Right, I remember that episode.
But my question
I don't
is,
think I saw it at the time, but
I'm sure you were watching it. But I really want, this is interesting because there's this incredible YouTube clip, and if you haven't seen it, I'll send it to you. It's only about 2 minutes long, and there are these like British or European journalists asking Frank about John McLaughlin. And, it's really interesting because you hear different stories. McLaughlin told me himself, Zappa was furious. Nobody wanted to close for Mahavishnu. Nobody wanted to close for them. There were...
To follow him, right?
Right, exactly. Like George Duke told a story when he was with Cannonball and that original Maha group came out and they played a set and it was so insane that everybody just unconsciously got out of their seat and walked and left the building, even though Cannonball still had to play. And nobody...
Yeah, I was going to say that it might be. It's like having dessert first.
So you
can't take anymore.
And so I wanted, because this is the interesting. What Zappa said was profound, and I'm not going to do justice to. They said, well, what do you feel about because at that time McLaughlin was a very intellectual player, and really was incorporating a lot of Indian scales within the playing, and his time feel was very unique, even though it was immaculate. It was also very weird where the beat fell. And,
yes.
Frank was like, listen, man, he's like, I think it's, for technical purposes, it's cool that you can run up and down the guitar and play all the thesaurus of scales, this, that, and the other. He's like, I'm really about like touch. I don't know. He didn't say touch people's hearts, but he said get people's hearts beating. Get them out of their chair. That's what I'm about.
Right.
And, and then they asked him about McLaughlin's spiritual philosophy. And Frank was so diplomatic, but also so smart. He was like, I have my own experiences. I put that into my music. So, of course, I think that's fair. But there was I was curious about, something that people bring up, because a lot of people say McLaughlin was pure light and energy and voltage as well. Just the idea of Frank's comedic bits, this sort of almost lowest common denominator smut that would come out of his mouth after playing like a 10-minute burning jam. And I just wondered, like, were you just into the whole scene and the whole show of itself? Because I will tell you, the Zappa that I really love, is just when they are going for it and going in and out of different meters and jamming. But sometimes when it's like he goes towards this racier or sexual vibe, it's like I'm like, what is going on here? I just want.
It almost is mean sometimes.
Yeah, man. Exactly. Yeah. Or like for some players, they'd be like, where did that come from? That just broke me out of my meditation. But for you saw him really early on, and that was more.
It felt experimental and not. Obviously, as a teenager, his sort of arrogance was attractive to me. I think I idolized him because he seemed like he couldn't do no wrong and always had the right repartee and the smartest guy in the room kind of vibe.
Totally, but not like yeah.
I did. Continued. I outgrew that scatological part of it and the sort of juvenile themes that he would play on. They're okay for a minute, and especially early on when he used them in a political context, say a song like "Brown Shoes Don't Make It," whatever. He was being crude, but he was also giving a message to it. But it got later on, it seemed to be just crudeness for crudeness' sake, and like I said, bordering on mean.
Don't eat the yellow snow. Yeah. But did you get a chance to actually ever meet Frank?
I met him a couple times. Yeah, I actually met him at that one concert at the just another band from LA show. I just walked up to the side of the stage, just being the fanboy that I was, and I kind of yelled over at him. I said, "Frank, I'm from Lancaster," and he said, "I feel sorry for you." And then I met him one time. He he was in name mostly producing the Beefheart, the Bad Shaped Boy record we did, and he would come by the rehearsal studio a couple times, and just kind of check in. So I never had a real one-on-one kind of relationship with him. But I think, like I said, about by the 2021, I had already kind of withdrawn a bit from him, and actually was more into the kind of genius that Don Vliet was portraying, because I realized then that so much of the stuff I liked about Frank was stuff that he had appropriated from Don.
Wow.
You got the goofy names like I don't know. What was that?
Oh my! I mean, there's too many. I mean, some of the stuff is so far beyond me. But you're telling me that a lot of that came from Captain Beefheart.
Yes, and Don would be the first to tell you that.
Yeah.
But the names of his albums that were really clever, and the names of songs. Uncle Meat, for example. What was that one? It was anyway, I can't remember. But some of the stuff I really loved from that I thought was so clever was really stuff he appropriated from Don, because Don was a never-ending fountain of it. It wasn't like you're grabbing something precious. Don was nonstop.
Oh my God, he was just 2 hours on a good night. He was riffing away. Like you'd come up.
Well, everything he said.
Yeah, that's insane.
Everything he said was poetry. And he talked in poetry, and like that thing we had talked about, the finest thread of continuity. But if you just look at just the large peaks that sound like nonsense, a stream of consciousness kind of thing. Don lived that way. I swear to God, bouncing from one like a little kid.
No, but I got to be honest. It just popped into my mind. Not that you hung with this cat, but I wrote a whole book on because I interviewed all the remaining merry pranksters, Ken Kesey's bunch, and I tell you, man, the way you're describing Don is the way Neil Cassidy was.
I'm not kidding.
Well, because Neil would. I mean, he had this thing. I can't even do justice to his, but it was like he would just be riffing off the cuff, and he would be able to tell. Now, maybe a little bit different with Don, but like Neil was able to start one story, start another story, and then tie them all back in this wild, like it made total sense. Or
that's Don completely exactly.
Exactly.
Right. Yes.
Exactly. And then he'd be driving down to Visadero in San Francisco. And he'd have a lady in the front. He had his head turned around, talking to the person in the back, and driving right through an intersection. And two cars would go right past him. Like it was like harrowing. It was harrowing. But the dude was he had something called the lag that I have to look up the definition of. But it's you would be fascinated by. But it just sounds to me like Don was on some kind of the spectrum, which we all are to a degree. But it was poetic. Cassidy was and it was totally spontaneous. There was nothing premeditated about it.
Right. Same with Don. There were times like you see his appearance on David Letterman. He was so self-conscious that he was kind of trying to generate what was naturally was already. So it seemed stilted and more weird than enlightening, But I'll tell you, I had so many conversations with Don where he would say some things, and I would remember them, but I'd have no clue what he was talking about. And then over the next 2 or 3 days, as I ruminated, like it would all start to it would be like ruminating over a poem, and then finally it dawns on you what they're talking about.
Wow.
And it was pretty cool to be around someone like that, and it helped me not be afraid to sound like an idiot when I relate the world the way I see it. And and I realize nobody around me has a clue what I'm saying. But
let me ask you. Well, no, but it's latent. It's just like it may not come across right away.
Yeah, and maybe you don't need an immediate acknowledgement.
You feel like Don, was you used a Letterman analogy where the bright lights were on. Was he not? Did he have I don't want to say stage fright, but was he? somebody that didn't really love performing live because there all of a sudden there was this certain superimposed beefheart that he had to put on instead of just being relaxed and riffing off the cuff.
That's true. And I saw that in the studio too.
Really?
When we rehearsed, and you could just feel free to innovate nonstop. It was a joy. And then when it came time, well, you got 3 takes, or I've got to now perform this song. It's the difference between being and performing,
I love this comment. This is so. Again, we're just riffing here with waxing poetic with J.T. Thomas, but This is just to put a button on this. Frank produced those albums. Was part of his role as a little bit of a Zen master, knowing Beefheart so well, to say, "Hey, man," like to get him out of his thinking, just to be. Was that part of his role as a producer, or was he just there to smoke cigs and sort of just riff?
I think he was there more just to look after his investment.
That's right. That's right.
I think he knew John so well that any input from Frank could really only cause an argument.
I see.
I think Don knew that he was miles beyond Frank in a certain way, and that that Frank sort of fed off the crumbs of his enlightenment in a certain way. Not musically necessarily, but certainly in Frank has this this image you cultivated of being a little weird and a little left of center, being odd. But in actuality, I think Frank was really just a brilliant businessman and a very clever and intelligent musician, and didn't really live in the fanciful world that it was implied. That there was a big influence from Don instead, And I think Don was always mad at him too. Don definitely felt that Frank had made a lot of money off of his ideas. Now, what do you say? It's like a child saying, "I said that," but Frank knew well enough what Don originated that was valuable. Don wouldn't have any idea of that because it was nonstop with him.
That's, you were there to a degree. I wasn't. Part of me essentially the character creation, it was the sort of verbal riffing and the sort of I don't know what the right word is, but the showmanship is what Frank knew that he could borrow.
Yeah, or you could say the packaging.
Yeah, that's right. And then ultimately, Frank probably, without ever articulating it verbally, was basically trying to pay Beefheart back by getting.
Absolutely, and Don could not help himself but resent that too. In his own.
Yeah, I dig. I get it, man. It's like a nepotism kind of thing, right?
Oh, the album I was trying to think of earlier, that was something Don said was Lumpy Gravy.
Lumpy Gravy.
Which, of course,
that became that's only associated with. That's so interesting because that's everybody would first thing they would say is Zappa.
Yeah, and that was something Don said, referring to semen. Everything Don said had a really
vulgar kind of
profound kind of a fundamental essence to it that was way beyond, and that the silliness was just the doorway to.
So interesting. All right, well, listen, I'm going to read you this quote from Bruce Hornsby in my interview with him about Molo. He said,
"Okay."
He said Molo was a classic character, and already this is when he first met him at Miami, and already his own man. He'd be hanging out at the pool and come in still wet in his bathing suit and just kill it on the trap set. Molo grew up as a Buddy Rich disciple in his high school days and before, so he could play the shit out of hard swing. We also connected personally. He's a very funny guy and a kind of jock, and so was I.
Yes.
So am I. Yeah.
Very much honest. Yeah.
He left school that year. I had one more year to go. I kept in touch with him the next year when he was back in D.C. I said, quote, I'm certainly going to come back to Virginia after I'm done at University of Miami. I'm going to start a band, and I'd love you to be the drummer. He said, yeah, I'm in. We've played together for the next 21 years. Now, I also saw that we have mutual friends, the legendary Barry Sless. So, did you?
Oh my God!
I mean, a ripper. So, how have you? I mean, because was that something that tangentially, like, wait, hold on for a second. You must have played with Molo with Bruce.
Yes, I did. That's when I first met Molo.
Oh my God!
In 1990, when I joined the last 2 years of the Range. So I'm like the only guy that crossed the line from the Range to present day.
Right. I love that. That's like a beefheart kind of thing. Yeah, go ahead.
In a certain way. So my impression, like those first few gigs when I first played with Bruce and Molo, they had this thing that they would go. It was almost like sparring on stage with each other. The band played the songs and stuff, but then any of the like extended improv sections would basically be Bruce going at it on the piano and John Molo, giving him hell, keeping up with him and edging him on. They were a sight to behold, and it just kind of left everybody else on stage in the dust as they did their thing, And it was probably the most exciting part of what I thought were the Range. What I thought was most exciting of the Range shows at that time, because we did the songs of the records and whatever, but then in certain sections, Bruce would extend it, and it would basically turn into the Molo and Bruce jazz hour for a moment.
Oh my God! So I mean, like I'm trying to envision this. It was sort of like they were trading. I mean, you see that sometimes,
but trading and also talking over each other too.
Wow!
And it was almost like imagine walking into a practice room at University of Miami and seeing these two guys just going for it. They would find a way to do that in the sets of pop tunes that exist at the time, and it was by far, to me, the most vibrant part of the set. Well, I mean, the Range was a great band. They sang great, and the songs were great. But in the live performance, the thing that kept it from just being a perfunctory was the explorations that Molo and Bruce would get into together. So, and I live very close to Molo, and so he and I have collaborated on lots of things.
Oh, that is so cool. You two are the great. You were like the two greatest merry pranksters around right now, dude.
Well, he is quite a character, no doubt. He has an incredible sense of humor. I was talking to Bruce about this. Let me tell you one story about Molo.
Please.
Because he has got a very wry and ironic.
No, I want to also say something before you go on. It's like what I love about Molo's humor is that he's such an honest person that there's a lot of self-deprecation, even though he's a jock too. He's not afraid to tell you that he was playing pickup hoops in the early '80s with all the unemployed actors. He himself was not working that much. It's like he to me, he just again exudes that idea of taking what he does seriously, but not taking himself that seriously.
He's got that gift of being amazingly funny without being goofy.
Right, exactly.
And I don't know how to do that. I have to get goofy. So of course he was renowned in the Range days for his humor, and. We were playing at a place. It's one of those theaters in the ground, in New York, Long Island.
Really,
the Music Circus, and Bruce, because they were such good friends, they were always had something going on between the two of them, and Bruce is a big practical joker anyway.
Oh yeah.
Well, somehow after one late night on the bus when Molo was entertaining all this, Bruce talked him into doing a 5-minute opening stand-up set before the band played the next day at What's the West something music
Oh,
circus?
Westbury, maybe. Westbury.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, Westbury.
This is
So,
great. 5 minute stand up. Oh my God.
To make the show more interesting, this is a night that Bradford Marsalis drove out from his house just to sit in with us.
Wow.
So we're there. The show's going on. The lights go down. Oh, Molo makes the deal. He says, I'll get up there and do it just for 5 minutes. But, if I'm bombing, if I'm dying, I'll give you this sign, and you guys come on up and start playing. Now you already know where this is going.
I already know exactly where it's going.
He's got barely maybe a minute into it, and it's just going nowhere. So he gives the sign, and a couple of us start heading towards the stage. Bruce says, "No, wait, let's just watch him squirt a little bit." And he had to stand up there for another, I don't know, minute and a half, not knowing why the cavalry wasn't coming. It was excruciating for me because I felt it for him, but it was also hilarious.
I mean, it's like a Zappa tune. The torture never stops. It's like please come out and save me. But yet, part of you's like, for a guy who's always he's always so cool for school. It's good to see him squirm a little bit.
The energy between those two guys was a huge part of the excitement of the range for the first years when I joined them.
Well, I want you to talk about that. I mean, from like you said, instead of it being a perfunctory set, you mean from a musician's point of view, or the audience also was getting off on just their musical conversation within the band.
Well, I can't speak to that because I really think, especially at that time, we were playing, the arena, 20, 15, 20.
Yeah, you guys had completely blown up, yeah.
Because I had big hits on the radio. So I think maybe in some cases it was sort of lost on the audience. But I think Bruce also knew he had to temporarily. Now when we play, it's like the whole show is like that. Just nonstop, free ride. Anything can happen.
Oh my God, dude! It's insane.
You've got to come catch a show.
Well, I saw you at the Fox Theater, and the only qualm I had was that that was more the venue issue. Is that I just don't understand why it has to be a sit down show. I'm not. Your music is dance music, and yet I understand the tickets are not cheap, and there's a lot of older cats that just want to see the tunes, but there's way too much creativity, spontaneous improvisation for me to sit down. And they were like, I remember one of the ushers came up to me at the show and was like, this is a request from Bruce to please not stand up during. And I was like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. This is ridiculous.
She really said that? Oh.
Absolutely.
I'm surprised.
Well, they let you go off maybe. I mean, I eventually wandered off into
into the aisles,
Exactly, the aisles, but it's like there was no dance floor. You know what I'm saying? It was also and that's part of my issue with. I mean, when in those big stadiums, there must have been a huge general admission dance pit.
Yeah, it was, but in essence, we were just playing the hits.
Right.
He only had we just recorded his third record, so there wasn't a huge a bunch of material we could draw on either. It was. In our set, it was the couple of records that people knew and had heard. But Bruce would find a way in the songs that were, amenable to it to put an extended section and a long solo or just a two-way jam, just him and Molo going at it, and bring some of his Grateful Dead background into it,
Well, that's the other story that's really great. I'm going to see if I can bring it up because Molo taught. This was a few years before J.T. Thomas joined, but and I'll look for it here. Did you wind up having like synth keyboard battles with Bruce? I mean, what were you? I mean, during those shows.
No, the first couple of years I played all synth. It was basically parts from the record. Extra parts that Bruce had layered on the record, but that he couldn't play while he was singing and playing piano. So I was just auxiliary to that. But as the adventurousness grew, Bruce started to realize that I was able to join them in that endeavor. So I started using, though it was a synth, I started using like a Hammond organ sound.
Wow.
And then that graduated me to actually playing real Hammond organ, as well as the synth parts. But it just suddenly, Bruce always loved the band.
Oh my God, Rick Danko, Richard
So-
Manuel and Garth Hudson.
Yeah, and so I kind of became his Garth Hudson.
Oh, dude,
For a while.
that's like the biggest compliment you could do. I mean, that's in.
I know.
Did you see the band early on, like during the Brown album or the Big Pink days, or no?
No, I never saw them live, but I was totally into all their records.
Exactly.
The early bands I was in as a teenager, we were learning band songs left and right. I mean, I thought of them as like the American Beatles.
Exactly. Well, it's funny because like 3 of those cats are from really rough parts of Ontario, but yeah, they were like the North American version.
North America's Beatles, yeah. And in a certain way, way more adventurous.
Way more. I mean, dude.
The Beatles were, yeah.
I mean, the Beatles they had their own thing, but the band was just like this. I mean, you get this self-pronounced cracker. I mean, Levon wanted to call the band the Crackers, from Arkansas,
right.
With Ronnie. And then you got these guys like Danko was working as a butcher when they found him, and Robbie was this good-looking kid from Cabbagetown in Toronto, outside with really rough part of Toronto. And then you have Garth. But like those, I remember Jim Weeder. I don't know if you ever played with him before. Great Telecaster. A guitar player.
Okay, Jim Weeder. Okay.
Yeah, played with a later iteration of the band in the mid '80s with Levon and Danko. Great cat, and he talked about seeing them in these places in '69, '70, and it was a baptismal experience, like Chest Fever when Garth would go into that organ solo.
Oh my God!
I mean, it was like, and there was nothing that had ever. Nothing rootsy like that, It was. I mean, soul jazz was there, but they weren't playing that kind of music. This was
I was going to say that the band was able to draw on a much richer musical heritage than the Beatles were with their, English.
Right. Skiffle play. Yeah. Right.
They had a certain thing that was well formed, but the amount of influence, musical styles that the band was exposed to and able to digest and spit back out was just ridiculously great,
This is I wanted to read you this because this sort of is the story you told about '90 with Molo and Bruce going back and forth. This is what Molo told me in one of our interviews. This is '87. He said we were in Laguna Seca. Bill Graham was there, Ry Cooder, The Dead, and Bruce Hornsby in the Range. We go out there and play and do pretty well. The Dead are in the middle of doing the Touch of Grey video late at night. So it's a happening scene. I'm digging it. The first time I saw them was at American University in '73. They still sound great. The audience is great. We play the first night, and then we come out the next day mid-afternoon. 2 young men in the front row look up at Bruce and say, Hey, Bruce, you're not going to play the same set, are you? Brucey had a bit of...
Exactly.
No, so this, but I mean, up to this point, so this is a great story. He goes, Brucey had a bit of an epiphany. Quote, oh, that's right. We've been playing the same set across the United States basically every night. Here we are the next day playing for the same crowd. They don't want to hear the same set. As I recall, Bruce went into some blues like, quote, I got the blues in my breakfast cereal, or some old tune. That's one of the things we learned quickly. It didn't take long for Bruce to realize, quote, oh, this is the Grateful Dead. These people were here yesterday. We've got to change it up. Those return customers have hired us for the evening. We are there to help their spirituality come to life. It's the obligation of the artist to connect and elevate that audience to some other place. That's what I got out of it. And I think Bruce learned the same thing. That is pretty heavy.
No, that's very heavy coming out of the mouth of John Molo, because he would not say that if it was not completely well considered.
Exactly. No, and I'm just saying, when those cats, that would have been Jake Feinberg there. Like, Bruce, do not repeat the same set. And he was like, oh, yeah. I got to do
Well, it's so funny because the current incarnation with Bruce and the Noisemakers, it's a mission. He tries to go 4 or 5 days without repeating a song.
Exactly.
Take
Oh, I love
one
that.
song like The Way It Is or Band on One of the Hits and try to include at least one each night. But we do like the Dead did get people who book 4 or 5 days of our tour and come to those 4 or 5 shows, knowing they won't hear anything the same twice.
I want to be clear though.
So,
There's something. There is a fast. It's. You're not playing. That would be way too old school. You guys aren't like. You're playing Flagstaff and then you're playing Santa Fe. You're not playing 3 nights Philly Spectrum. You're not playing 3 nights at the same venue though.
no,
That's what was unique about those times. Was like the expectation was they're in Laguna Seca for 3 nights, opening for the Dead. You're
right. You're like sort of their house band.
Exactly. You dare not play the same set, and you better ideally don't repeat any tunes. But if you do, don't play them the same way.
Yeah, and also they're there for a much larger purpose in their own mind than just being entertained.
Absolutely.
They're on another kind of quest. And the band is only part of that. The drugs are part of it. The community is part of it. The enlightenment is part of it. But it isn't like, it's on us to make these people have a good time. They're going to have a good time with you or without you, in that Dead context.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just so it's so revelatory. And actually, I'm curious. Well, it's interesting that he used. I know he's a jokester and a jock, but it's just funny that he uses the word noisemakers because,
well, look, there's a story behind it.
Go ahead.
When he and Molo were doing like their club bands, before just playing around Virginia and stuff, at the local bars.
Sure.
One of the bars that they would play in, he said they were in the afternoon, went in to set up their gear. There's like one drunk guy at the bar sitting there, and this guy made the comment, "Here come the noisemakers." So he drew it from that particular.
I was going to say that's good because I often I'm like, there's sound and then there's noise, and I don't consider anything you guys do noise. I consider it great sound.
I think it's tongue in cheek because he knew this guy had no interest in what the band was going to play.
Totally. No, it makes sense now. Yeah. No, I love that. Tell me, I want you to talk, something we haven't talked about. Please tell me about this band, Rattlesnakes and Eggs.
Wow. Well, they were at the time when I was a teenager, there were 2 primary bands in the Antelope Valley that were of super high quality. One was called The Farm, and they were incredible. And then there was another band called Rattlesnakes and Eggs. Now these guys, they were doing like what the theatrical band from the Tubes. They were doing like what the Tubes did, having themed sets, wearing costumes, theatrical, goofy face paint, but not,
But
not
way earlier though.
Yeah, way earlier. This would have been 1969, 70, so they were also influenced by Beefheart and Zappa, having come from sort of the same roots, being homegrown from the Antelope Valley, and so I was a huge fan of them. This is kind of thing now. So imagine 15-year-old me or 14-year-old me going to one of their concerts at the local, a junior college, and I'd go right in the front row, and I wore a gas mask, and I stood there wearing this gas mask the whole time.
Dude, that is so legend. I mean, dude, just put me there, dude.
So they were the only local guys that were doing anything at all that seemed current or had even the tinge of the avant-garde to it. And so at the age of 17, they had a couple guys leave the band, and the guitar player had met me at the local college there and knew I could play, and invited me at 17 to join the band. And at the same time, the drummer who had left, they called John French, who was Drumbo from the
Absolutely.
That's one of the John quit and rejoined Beefheart, half a dozen times. But this is one of his, or this is maybe probably right after Lick My Decals, maybe. And he had been drumming along with Artie Tripp, but it's just he and Don's relationship was not good. And John did all the work. John was we'll go more into John anyway. But
no, I want to talk. This guy, has he left us? Is he not with us anymore?
No, he is still with us.
He's still okay. Because this, I mean, I know that you. I want you to talk about the genius of Drumbo.
Oh, he was my mentor at that time. I mean, he was probably 22 and I was 17, but we hit it off right away. I was such a smart ass. The first time I came out there, we jammed together. At the end of it, the first jam, he turned to me as a compliment, said, "Hey, you play pretty good." And I said to him, 17-year-old me, "Well, so do you. Now are we even?"
Oh my God.
Such a little shit,
Oh my God. Well, you know what? I mean, I mean, you're basically saying, "Hey, man, let's just do this." I like that though. There's a moxie there.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize sort of how disrespectful I was being because I was just trying to belong, But
right,
John was an incredible talent. He's one of the guys. The record I did, Don wrote a lot of stuff just sitting at a piano, just plucking stuff out, not with any.
No rhyme or reason. Yeah.
No. He would just record it on a cassette, and then John would transcribe the cassette, and then figure out where to finger it on the guitar deck, and then teach it to the guitar players in the band.
Holy! I mean, how big were this guy's ears, man?
Yeah, he was just. And also his love and admiration for what Don was able to do. And John French is the spark plug behind so much of the great Beefheart music. And unfortunately, I think Don was either alternately, so needy of him, and then also so embarrassed or so threatened by him, I would say is a better word, because this was sort of his right-hand man, but also he didn't trust anybody because why? He wasn't. He didn't make friends that way because he was just he was too much about himself. He had to be that guy.
Right. No, but it was more an ego. It wasn't a neurotic. Well, it sounds like he was a little bit paranoid, a little bit.
Yeah, he was completely paranoid, and
right. So he was his right-hand man, but he also despised him because he needed him. He couldn't do without him.
And he also knew how talented John was in ways that he wasn't.
Wow. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
And if you've heard any of John's solo records, then he could play, he could sing, he could write. So that was the Rattlesnakes and Eggs that I joined. I'd seen them for a few years, and they'd already had an incredible reputation for all this staging and stuff. But then, this is probably 72, and now we're really going to make the push to make it. We all live together in a little house out in Pear Blossom, which is where Aldous Huxley lived.
Whoa, dude!
Are
you kidding me?
We grew spaghetti squash in the backyard so we could afford to keep playing, and do a few gigs, and we did demos, and trying to get into the music business. But being out in the desert, we're just a little too far away, and I think we're just a little too eccentric and maybe unyielding in terms. We had a manager and stuff, but we didn't want to do what the manager said, and we wanted to do it our way, and the usual shortcomings of
I appreciate your honesty. It's like normally you hear about. It's just funny you hear about these I just did this a couple interviews with Chester Thompson, and management was being funny and not communicating. But then, sometimes that's only one side of the story because you realize that the musicians themselves can be total wise asses and hard to work with, too, to a degree.
Right. And a lot of times management's job is to pass on a message from higher up that the higher up doesn't really want to be responsible for. So it's on the manager to bring the bad news to the guys, and so the RXA in Zappa's case, so he could maintain a working relationship with the guys while giving them the bad news that he needed to give them, whatever it might be.
Were you also like channeling at that time, Spaghetti Squash? Were you channeling the Doors of Perception? Were you guys dropping a lot of acid at that time?
Yes, we did. It was not a lot.
Not a lot, but yeah.
All the guys in the band were older than I was, but I was kind of catching up. That was the first time I started smoking weed every day, and my first acid. I remember my very first acid trip. I put on the Stravinsky Rite of Spring record. And sat down there, cross-legged. It was definitely the enlightenment ritual. It was not a party experience at all. And that of all the ballets to listen to, that one just scared the shit out of me.
That is a wild choice.
It was in full bloom, and I was in full bloom. It was like I barely got through it. Just breathing heavy, and so and that's like at 17. So I was a pretty serious-minded little kid, I guess. To make that my reason for taking acid now.
So you guys were resistant. I mean, did Drumbo's relationship with Don? They were able to coexist for a minute, but then it got too untenable.
Yeah, and then he'd leave for a while, and then Don would make another record and would entice John to join again, and John would go back and help him with another record, and then the abuse or the unsatisfactoriness of the relationship would lead John to swear him off again, and then leave to do something else, and then back again.
It got a bit toxic, yeah.
Yes, and John really endured the worst of it because I'm sure he learned a lot too. But he invested his great musicalness into Don's records, and was basically got the boot for it.
Wow.
The boot ground into him. So it was tough. I love John to death, and since Don died, John has done a few tours, putting together the Magic Band, which you probably may know that they.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Touring.
Oh yeah.
And originally it was all original. He asked me if I could do it, but I was too busy. I couldn't do it. But he got Denny Wally and Mark Boston and Rocket Morton and original players, even like Gary Lucas. So they did some tours with England, and John was up front singing Don's songs and doing an amazing job of it, and also playing the saxophone like Don did. And for all intents and purposes, it had all the impact and musicality and originality that the real Magic Band had with Don, except of course you can't fill a hole like Don. But John singing, John rose to the occasion incredibly. Let me just say that his closeness with Don and his expertise at what Don did, and also his inside and out of all the music that he had helped Don put together over the years, made that a very satisfying version of whatever you could get of the beef art world that existed at that time. So he finally had to quit doing it. I think it just wasn't financially sustainable after he probably did 5 or 6 tours, and started having to use different musicians as Mark Boston's health started to fade, and I think Teddy Wally didn't want to do it anymore because it wasn't remunerative enough. So, but I cannot speak highly enough about Drumbo. He is my original mentor and one of my best friends. Although we don't see each other that much, he's got a very strongly held religious belief that seems to come between us. So,
Oh, you mean it's sort of? Yeah, that's not. That is
kind of it's odd for the story I'm telling for that to be part of it, but
yeah. It's funny
very,
because there's so many cats
fervent.
that turn. I don't know. I've connected recently with Alex Acuna, from Weather Report, and
Right.
Chester Thompson, Bill Maxwell, Abe Laboriel, and like those guys are deeply faithful people. But to me, they come from that George Washington Carver, methodology. Like, what are you going to do to make the world a better place? You're not shrouded in dogma, and you're not like embracing. I don't know. It just to me, like it in some ways, and I'm not going to speak for Drumbo. It's more like, are they trying to make amends, knowing that we're all mortal, and they're trying to go towards this sort of purist or thing where they're going to make up for all that time that they supposedly were sinning or doing their thing. I don't know. He's not the only one.
No, and I think what you're saying could be easily summed up with the question. Are you out to save the world, or are you out to save yourself?
That's right. That's right.
It kind of
turns
in
as is
fear of your own damnation more important than maybe what you could do with it.
That being said, it's like important in this time, as best you can, to always, stay in touch and continue to try to relate on the levels you can relate on, and that's your ability to change the world. It's not about you; it's about closure is very important in life. And if you say something to that effect, where he was your biggest mentor, no matter what, it's still important as life.
Yes.
Spiritually, and going into closure is just very important. So, and I don't sense that there's necessarily bad blood. It's just you guys don't talk because you're kind of operating on different frequencies.
Well, and we've been so close for so long that we've had those many hour late night sessions talking to each other fervently about what we feel and where our heart is at, and there's a total understanding, but it becomes an impasse,
Right.
Yeah, I see. So there's no real need to. You kind of get it. You get it. You get what the limit, what your limit with him is. Where your paths
exactly. Like you can only go. That's right. Yeah, you get to that impasse. You can't go any farther.
No, you keep doing what you do, but you have to diverge. You can't do it together anymore. At a certain point.
No, it's yeah.
It's fun. I mean, it's happens with women too. So.
My God, it does. Yeah, no. It's weird, and I don't really know if there are any words to do justice for it. Let me ask you, on this tour, just do you feel like, you've been with Bruce for so long, but do you still, when you just stripping away the idea of, being able to see the country and getting paid for something you love to do and being treated fairly respectfully, at the end of the day, are you still finding moments of inspiration on this?
Absolutely.
That's what because that's what it's really about,
And also in the way Bruce sort of I guess you could say the mission statement that he brings the band together under is still it's actually ever expanding. It's not contracting. It's not getting less. It's actually there's more opportunity, and he's more open-minded to anything that any of us want to contribute. And you told me you had talked with John Mylander, right?
A couple times, yeah, dude. One of my heroes.
Right now, he is the breakout light of this tour.
Oh, that makes me feel. No, that's so great. Lean on the young cats, man.
No, and he is so game, so ready to go for it, and so and also so his explorations are fascinating because they reveal sort of his interest in all the things he's into. They aren't so much as maybe from a couple of older cats. It's more like, look what I found, and John is more like, look what I'm finding. You know,
Wow.
It's a different, and I don't know if it reads that way to anybody else, but to me, being on stage there and playing with him, I just take delight every time that the spotlight goes on him. And Bruce throws it around a lot. I mean, Bruce just puts everybody on the spot and in different pair combinations. He delights in asking you to play someplace where it's totally inappropriate for your instrument to play, you know, that kind of thing.
Dude, that's he's totally obsessed. I mean, his
his
leadership style sounds directly out of the Miles Davis book, you know?
It's completely.
Unbelievable, because that's it, man.
He didn't learn it that way. He's doing it because that's actually who he is.
Exactly. No, totally. I mean, totally authentic. But the way that he gets the best, I mean, that's the most important thing. I mean, why are you bringing people into a band? Because you want them to bring their own individual flavor to the gumbo. And then the question is, how do you get them inspired to do that?
Right.
Put them on the spot.
Half of it is one, doing it yourself.
Right.
And being exemplary, you know, setting a perfect example of, well, this is what I'm into, and maybe you guys can join. Maybe you're interested in joining me. And, you know, sort of that leading by example as opposed to by description. You know, it's funny. I was just talking to Gib Joel, our guitarist, last night, and I was saying, yeah, you know, all the years I've been doing this, I feel like it's, you know, I have to be in the Miles Davis of pop bands. You know, it's just. And it's still extremely challenging to me to feel like I can say something of value but not repeat myself. You know, that never ends. Every night it's like, well, what am I going to do now?
Well, especially too if, you know, like, to me, it's just it keeps people, it keeps them out of their thinking mind because they have to really be on their toes. And they have to react to what's, you know, because he's not, maybe you'll have a set list, maybe, but he's, you know, he might have you playing in places that you've never played in before.
Absolutely, without a doubt. He delights in that. And he's the kind of guy that will do things deliberately with that in mind. Like, just in the middle of a song, he'll drop a bar. He'll just leave them, you know, going from one verse to another. He'll enter the verse a bar early just to see if you're listening. Just to break up the four-corneredness of it all. So
oh my God!
Square.
Yeah, that's a very
it's
Phil.
Not predictable.
Yeah.
Makes, you know.
It's a very Phil like sort of Phil Leshian kind of thing too.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He definitely absorbed a lot from his love of the Dead, you know, and it's his time with him. But it's funny because you realize. Because there is no set list, how much our entire any given night, it depends totally on the excellence of his whims. You know how strong his whim of that night is, and how well he is at following it. And I'll say this to you: Bruce is totally straight up. He doesn't drink, doesn't do weed or anything like that. But there have been a couple shows where. I remember one in San Diego where he's got a lot of jock friends, you know.
Sure.
Some baseball players from the Angels came, and one of them is carrying some some homemade what do you call them, moonshine.
Yeah.
And got Bruce to drink a little bit of it, and so Bruce was a little tipsy in the show. I guess it's got to be maybe one of the worst shows we ever did because you're basically trying to follow someone around who's not walking straight anyway. Yeah, it made me realize just how much this happened 20 years ago, but how much we rely on the clarity of his North Star sense to make it all make sense.
Wow, that's a profound statement to make, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know he doesn't look at it this way. He probably laughed if he heard me describe it this way, but he it doesn't feel like it's a pressure or a burden on him at all. It's more like it's more like leading the charge, you know.
Well, it's just the idea is like,
joyful.
yeah, no, it's like the idea of just being and allowing those whims to come through you. You have to really have a full confidence and trust in yourself, because otherwise you could wind up. I mean,
that he has. That's one thing that he has more than maybe any musician I ever played with. Bruce has a real sense of who he is, and he's not afraid to make a mistake. He's not afraid to sound bad or look bad. He won't let that stop him from doing what he wants to wants to attempt. And he's been a great teacher to me that way. I watched him attempt things that would just embarrass me to death because of my ego,
Right, and he's just like, he's having a ball.
Dust himself off and get right back up. Yeah. So I got to hand it to him for his straightforwardness in that way. And I don't think it's normal. I think regular people could be like that, but he sure can, and he's a great. He's done a great thing by positioning himself as sort of the psychic leader of this endeavor. No one is more capable of inspiring it in the other guys around him like he does with this band, and we are all, for lack of a better word, disciples of that. And we have to play. We play like that.
Right. You don't play. It's not. He's not some sort of like authoritarian. It's just because he's able to always pull. Yeah. He's able to pull the rabbit out of the hat every night and do it so effortlessly that it is inspiring to you to make you become a disciple. Yeah.
Yes, and I remember realizing early on that there are keyboard licks that I could play on any other gig that don't fit on the Bruce's gig. He has a very, I would describe it as a rigid aesthetic, because it's so clear and so true to him. So it kind of makes you get out of yourself, and that you can't just bring the same old stuff that you would somewhere else to the gig. You have to actually shed that clothing in order to put on something else, to dress it the right way. You have to not bring that. It's sort of similar to what Don had to do with his musicians, which was he'd be the first thing I had to teach them how not to play.
Right. Wow.
Which is a thing you said was Miles Davis too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you play like you don't know how to play. Yeah. Right.
You play like you don't. Yeah.
That's right.
Which if you understand the psychology of that, it is basically teaching you to be free. And it's not so you can't try to be free. That's just another restriction. I got to be free. You can't do it that way.
Well, I mean, it's just that was, well, I don't, it's like one of those things when you get to a point of mastery. I mean, I don't care if it's McLaughlin or Billy Cobham, Jack DeJohnette, whose birthday it is. Those guys were pretty much accomplished jazz musicians, and then to basically, but at some point you can get a little too, I don't know, I want to say uptight, but then all of a sudden it's like there's a right way and a wrong way to do something, and the minute that you fire in one of these musings or whims that just turn it on its head, then all of a sudden you're like, that's goofy. But then all of a sudden you're totally playing like that, and it works.
Well, if you have the ears and the
and humility too, you do need to get
system to respond to it in kind.
That's right. And Maylander has. I mean, Maylander is this is the lineage of it, right? I mean,
he's fantastic. He's the bright star in the band right now, and I just love.
No, I love that. It's dude. You give that guy a big hug for me today, all right?
I will. I told him that we had talked before.
No. He sent me a message when you guys were playing Flag, but I was like, it's a bridge too far, my brother. But JT, let me know when you get off the road, because if it works, the next time I'm in Cali, I'd love to come see you do an interview in person.
Oh, I'd love it. Where do you live?
I live in Tucson.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I do. I'm
Yeah,
on the
we're
I'm on the
friends.
road seeing music. So where are you at? You're in so.
I'm in the valley, yeah.
Okay.
In the valley.
I don't have
Just
anything
down
on the calendar, but we'll figure it out. But we'll definitely link up and it'd be great to meet you in person. I'm having a ball.
Yeah, obviously, it would be great to see you. And if you're in town and you're lucky, maybe you can come catch some of the younger unknown. I do a lot of work, a lot of really cool.
Oh, dude, I need that. Dude, that's I'm feeding. It's a feeding frenzy down here because we got an amazing farm system here of just badasses. So I would love to. I always love finding those. You know, it's because that's really what it's all about is just the continuum. You know.
Yeah. Well, I that's what I try to do with my time at home. So when I'm not doing sessions and stuff, but if I'm going to go play at some club in Hollywood, it's going to be something like that.
Right.
Somebody I think you would like. So.
Hey man, it's so dude. Thank you for raising the vibration today, man, and have a great rest of the tour. And let's just stay in touch. All right.
Yeah, of course, dude. You get in touch with me anytime, Jake.
Much love, dude.
Back to you, Jake.
All right, man. Be cool.
Bye.
Later.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.